What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and you'll notice I got a big old smile on my face, and I can't deny it. It's here. The joy is here, and that is because today, October 10th, 2022, marks a banned and restricted announcement that Wizards of the Coast has released that I am excited for. There are two cards that have been banned in various formats, and one of them is the Meathook Massacre, which is currently banned in Standard. Now, on Arena, this will be going into effect on October 13th, so that is a Thursday, so heads up for that. That means if you are on MTG Arena right now and you do not currently have a playset of Meathook Massacre, I would highly recommend you use your Mythic wildcards to craft a full playset of the Meathook Massacre, because then you will be refunded those wildcards on Thursday when the ban goes into effect. Excellent. If you're on Magic Online, that ban goes into effect on October 10th, today, and same is true for paper. So if you have a paper deck that has Meathook Massacre in it, I'm sorry, Meathook Massacre is officially no longer legal for you to play. So there we go. Here it is, Meathook Massacre, no longer legal in Standard. Now, it's still legal in Pioneer, Explorer, Historic, Alchemy with the Alchemy changes, that's still fine. You've got Legacy, Modern, all that jazz. Meathook Massacre is still viable in those formats. And it's still a very strong card. So, and Commander, for the, so it's still just very good. It is banned in Brawl, oddly enough. I didn't realize that until I just looked over at my other screen. Anyway, that wasn't mentioned today. That's actually been the case for a while. But, in any event, banned in Standard, Meathook Massacre. Now, we're going to get into the article and talk through some of the reasoning, but the other thing that I wanted to just start off with here is the other ban. There was a ban in Modern, and that is Yorion Sky Nomad. The Skynoodle has gotten the axe in Modern. It is official as of today. And again, I believe the same effective dates. Although actually Magic Online it's today, and Tabletop is where it's impacted because Modern is not currently on MTG Arena. So Yorion Sky Nomad, this is one of the companions from Ikoria. The companions in Ikoria have been a massive pain in everybody's butt since they came out, with Luris being a massive problem child in a number of formats, and actually saw a ban in Modern, I believe just earlier this year. It wasn't too long ago, really. Because it was just ubiquitous. And then the moment Luris was gone, now all of a sudden Yorion value piles have become kind of one of the new hotnesses. And apparently it's gotten to a point where Wizards believes it is problematic for the format, to a point where they do want to take care of Yorion as well. Now, I'm at a point, to be honest, when it comes to these companions, if they just blanket banned all companions, or made the companion mechanic illegal in some way so that we just don't have the extra card, I wouldn't be mad, frankly, because, I mean, at this point, the best case scenario with companions is like, you have a free card that doesn't really hurt you for running it. Like Obosh, there are certain decks you can build around that. You can build decks around Kahira, for example. But like a lot of times, Kahira or the other one, that's the Grohl one that's escaping my mind right now, they're just free rolls. You could just have them in a deck, so you just run them. There's no reason not to. And Yorion, it turns out, the downside of having to put 20 additional cards in your deck, truth is, if those 20 cards are good cards, it's still worth having. So here it is, everybody, the banned and restricted announcement. Announcement date, October 10th, Meathook in Standard, and Yorion in Modern, with the effective dates as previously mentioned. So, as far as the Standard ban goes, let's take a look. How did Wizards justify this ban? What is their reasoning behind banning the Meathook Massacre in Standard? And I quote, "As is often the case, the Standard card pool rotation with the release of Dominaria United caused quite a shakeup, with cards from the new set finding their places into decks, and many of last year's cards shifting context within the new metagame. As the format has settled into place, the color black has proven powerful and prolific, and makes up the foundation of many of the top decks. Despite that commonly shared color, we're seeing good diversity among competitive decks and strategies, and player engagement with the format has been healthy." That makes sense. I can absolutely buy that. One kind of pet peeve of mine in the past couple of weeks is the frustration of when I say black is just too good in Standard. A lot of the time I will get the response, or some response to the effect of, "Oh, the mono black deck's not that bad. I can beat it with Esper, or I can beat it with Jund." And it's like, well, sure, I didn't say the mono black deck was a problem. I said black. Like the color black in Standard is just too strong right now as a whole. It's not one specific card, and that's what I find frustrating in Standard presently. And yeah, and so they're kind of acknowledging that here. They're saying, like, yes, we understand the color black is shared amongst like the majority of the top meta, and but at the same time, like, there are various cards that kind of go interchange. Like, some are running Graveyard Trespasser, some are running Liliana, some aren't. Some are running Tenacious Underdog. Those are just great cards that fit in certain shells and do a lot of good stuff. And Meathook Massacre is amongst them. It's just like great cards to slot in. Anyway, what else did they say? To provide a small push against the color black's play rate among competitive decks, we're choosing to ban one black card. We discussed several different options, as no single black card stood out as a major power outlier played by all decks containing black. Fair enough. Ultimately, we decided that banning the Meathook Massacre was the best choice, as it's one of the most powerful black cards in the format, is especially powerful against specific archetypes, decks relying on a lot of small creatures, and has had its time to shine in Standard for over a year. With the Brothers' War on the horizon, we anticipate the new cards entering the format to provide tools for other decks and other color combinations. In the meantime, we expect this little shakeup will help keep Standard enjoyable and tending toward an even healthier spot going forward as the card pool expands. I couldn't agree more. Right now, there is an entire archetype of deck that is almost non-existent in Standard, and that is aggro. You do see mono red aggro occasionally, but to be honest, if you're running one of these black X decks, if you have Meathook Massacre, the mono red deck doesn't stand a chance. Like, the one card completely destroys that entire deck. So if you're running 4 Meathook Massacre, or if you have Meathook Massacre in your sideboard, maybe you have 2 main, 2 side, or something like that, you get 4 into the main, all of a sudden it's over for them. So the fact that aggro, whether mono red, mono white, Boros, like Boros aggro prior to rotation was like the hotness. It was the #1 deck by a mile. And then post rotation, because it lost some of its support pieces and black gained a ton of other powerful cards that people wanted to play that color for, all of a sudden Meathook Massacre just became the thing. So it was around before, but Liliana, Sheoldred, they weren't around before. Now they are. Now they're here. So Cut Down also wasn't around before. Now it is. Another great piece to deal with the aggro decks. And now it's like, so Cut Down, Infernal Grasp, still here, still going strong. Soul Transfer, still here, still going strong. Path of Peril, still here, still going strong. A lot of people have forgotten about it, but it is a viable board wipe in black, especially decks that have white in it as well. So it's not as good as Meathook Massacre, of course not, but it's viable. It's still here. So there are still answers to there are answers to aggro still, but they're not as ubiquitous and not as generically powerful as Meathook Massacre, which is exactly what I want to see. So I'm excited for that. I think aggro has an opportunity to step up and become part of the meta again in a way that it wasn't previously. And I think that might shake things up to a point where the mono black deck, like the mono black mid-rangey deck that we all know, that some people call aggro and some people call control and some people call mid-range, at the end of the day, it's all the same deck. Like, that deck that does it all might get shaken up, because if a good aggro deck can get in under it, then maybe there's a shot. Because if you're going up against a board of 5 or 6 creatures coming at you, Invoke Despair doesn't really do much, whereas Meathook destroys it. So anyway, very interesting. I'm excited for this. I'm very curious to see how things shake out. Now, as far as Modern, let's see, what did they have to say about the Modern banning? All right. Modern has been in a healthy place since the last ban and restricted update, with good diversity among archetypes and even the most powerful competitive decks occupying a relatively small slice of the metagame, about 5 to 6% each on Magic Online. However, as tabletop modern play continues to rebound since the height of the pandemic, we've decided to enact a change that we've been considering for some time by banning Yorion Sky Nomad. Yorion most commonly appears as a companion in 4-color Omnath decks, which show a strong win rate and, according to our matchup data, are likely to continue to rise in popularity. In addition to game balance concerns with the deck, we're also factoring in the physical dexterity requirement of playing with a large deck for tabletop. We're wary of the metagame reaching a point where players are playing the deck because of its perceived strength and win rate, despite not enjoying how cumbersome it can be to operate. I gotta stop for a second there. They are literally saying that part of the reason they don't like Yorion in Modern is because shuffling an 80-card deck is a pain in the butt. Am I understanding that correctly? Because that's how that reads to me. In a world where Commander is such a popular physical paper format, I find that hilarious. I shuffle 99 card decks all day. An 80 card deck? Granted, this is a fetch land format, so you're doing a lot more shuffling, but still, that seems like a silly reason to me, but whatever. Like, whatever. It is what it is. Anyway, let me continue. While these physical dexterities exist to a lesser degree in other formats like Pioneer, Modern specifically entails more shuffling and other physical card manipulation because of the deep card pool of card selection spells, fetch lands, and so on. Fair. Cards encouraging large decks like Battle of Wits have existed in the past, but usually on the fringes of competitive play rather than as one of the strongest decks. Finally, we've also heard from many players that the repeated triggers caused by Yorion and many of the cards surrounding it can lead to repetitive gameplay patterns and long games with lots of downtime between the other players' actions. It's important that the player experience playing with the top decks is a fun one, and while we're okay with such decks existing, it can make the format less enjoyable when these patterns are associated with one of the strongest decks over a long period of time. Therefore, to make Modern as fun and accessible as it can be for all types of players, Yorion Sky Nomad is banned in Modern. So I find that to be an interesting statement because it's fair. The idea of a deck that is capable of dominating large chunks of play time where the opponent just has to sit there, not necessarily fun to deal with. That's what makes a lot of those super like storm combos, like a lot of the times, like the storm combos, the eggs combos, where you can just kind of go off for a turn, where one of your turns can take 10 minutes. Like a lot of people don't like that, and that's fair. Now, is that enough of a reason to make the card bannable? I personally don't think so. However, what it is a great excuse to make the card bannable. The other thing that Wizards of the Coast cannot talk about, so I can, because I'm not associated with the Wizards of the Coast, aside from being a fan, and they have given me, some assets and early access and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, another big issue here is cost. The price of the top deck in competitive play matters. There was a time where if you wanted to play Modern, you could get a burn deck or a storm deck for as little as $300, maybe $500. Like, maybe that was more common, but like a couple $100, you could get a decent Modern deck. Is it going to be the best Modern deck? Probably not, but it's going to be good. If you wanted the best of the best, you'd be looking at $700, $800, $900. Okay. And if you wanted Jund, which was like the top dog, most expensive deck out there, it was like $1,200, maybe $1,300, which is a lot of money. Sure, it is, no question. But at the same time, like, okay, to get into a non-rotating format with a deck that is consistent, that has proven itself to be valuable over time, all right. Magic is a luxury hobby, so it has a luxury price tag for a luxury format. Fine. There are Yorion decks right now, these 4-color Omnath decks that they're talking about, that can cost $2,000 to $3,000 to get your hands on one of the better decks in the format. Frankly, that is asinine. The idea of spending $3,000 or even $2,000 on a deck of 105 cards, you got your 80 card, 95 cards. You got your 80 card main deck and then your 15 card sideboard. The idea of spending thousands of dollars on one deck so that you have a good competitive Modern deck, that's absurd. And Yorion is a key piece of that because Yorion requires you to have 20 additional cards in your deck. And obviously, if you're trying to build the best deck in the format, yeah, some of those are going to be lands, but even then, you're going to have expensive lands, and like you're going to make sure that those 20 cards are not going to be filler. Those are going to be good, competitive, strong cards, which demand a high price tag. So as a result, if Yorion is a companion of your Modern deck, the whole deck is going to be significantly more expensive just by the nature of the card. And so that's a huge issue. Now, Wizards cannot acknowledge the secondary market. They will never do so. Otherwise, they might run some massive legal challenges. There's a reason. Actually, I'm kind of surprised to see they're still getting away with secret layers. But in any event, that's a whole thing. The secondary market, you will not hear a Wizards of the Coast employee acknowledge the secondary market. They just pretend like it doesn't exist. Even though you can tell by their secret layer pricing and the way they price their products, they know damn well what's going on. But in any event, I have no doubt that that is a factor with this ban as well. If Modern is designed to be approachable, if you want more players playing Modern, make it cheaper. This ban did that in one fell swoop. It made the whole format notably cheaper. And you're less likely, if you do have a $500 burn deck, you're far less likely to show up and get steamrolled by somebody who can afford the 4-color value pile. I mean, like, I've heard people refer to the Yorion deck as the money pile. That's absurd. Like, yeah, that deck, like, the idea of a deck that is just the money pile existing in a format, that doesn't sit well with me. Apparently doesn't sit well with Wizards either. So, interesting. Now, they also have some other notes about some of the other formats that did not see bans. So let's see what Wizards of the Coast had to say about those. All right, we have Pioneer. They say, overall, Pioneer looks to be in a good place as we head into the Regional Championship Qualifier season throughout November and December. We're seeing a wide variety of strategies employed by the most popular decks. The most played deck on Magic Online is Rakdos Midrange, with about 13% metagame share. None of the top 20 most played decks have a non-mirror match win rate of more than about 53%. In general, we've heard a lot of positivity from players about the state of the format. We'll continue to keep an eye on the health of the format, especially as it undergoes more competitive pressure with the regional championship qualifiers. As things currently stand, we don't anticipate any changes before or during that season. Now, I personally don't play Pioneer. I do play Explorer, so I have some feelings on that. Explorer being kind of Pioneer light. And to this day, I still find it interesting that Winota was ban-worthy, but Greasefang is not. I'm not sure what the story is there because they have similar play patterns. However, apparently Wizards is towing that line, and it would seem that the Greasefang deck is a good one, but not the dominant deck in the meta. So, all right, fair enough. They have access to the data. I don't. So, I'm going to trust them on that one. And if people are enjoying Pioneer, sweet. Keep doing what you're doing. All right, Legacy. The Legacy metagame is looking healthy, with top decks all having strengths and weaknesses against each other. Since the ban of Ragavan Nimble Pilferer in January, the most popular deck, Izzet Delver, has had its win rate trend downward, according to Magic's online data. It represents about 9% of the field and has an overall non-mirror match win rate of 52%, with both positive and negative matchups against the next 10 most played decks. Wow, that's interesting, because I've heard nothing but frustration about that deck, so I'm glad to hear that it's actually, like, the numbers are at least showing good, yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, the past year has brought several new impactful cards to competitive Legacy, including Unlicensed Hearse, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, Ledger Shredder, Leyline Binding, and more. We're excited to see the format continue to grow as new cards lead to new strategies. As always, we'll continue to monitor how the metagame develops, but right now, things seem to be in a good spot. Cool. Fair enough. Vintage. Likewise, we think Vintage is in a relatively good spot. Magic Online data shows greater archetype diversity recently than we've had in some past cycles, in part because of new card additions to the format, Displacer Kitten and Vidalian Hexcatcher, for example, that feature prominently in their respective decks. Other new cards like Boseiju Who Endures are finding a home in a variety of decks. We're aware that many of the current top decks make powerful use of Tinker and are often categorized together. But within that category, there's a good amount of diversity in terms of how those decks can be built and play patterns they follow. We're also seeing healthy amounts of good stuff decks, Vengevine variants, and Workshop variants in the metagame. Overall, we think Vintage is in a good place right now and don't anticipate the need for changes soon. Fair enough. You know, in a format where you can have one of each Mox and a Lotus in your deck, the fact that some of these new cards, the fact that Displacer Kitten and Vidalian Hexcatcher, and Boseiju for that matter, are good enough to see play in Vintage to the point where it's actually impacting the meta-analysis on Wizards, like they feel the need to call them out here, that's impressive. Like, those cards are very good for what they do. So yeah, good stuff. I like that. So I'm glad that the Vintage and Legacy, if things are looking good, don't shake it up, rock on. I'm kind of surprised like Murktide wasn't mentioned. I've heard nothing but frustration from people who play in formats where Murktide is legal, that Murktide Regent is a thing. I personally do not play these older formats. I would love to, but I can't afford it. So, well, that and Magic Online is just a really rough client that I can't get into. But anyway, yeah, this is cool. So this was the ban restricted announcement. Good stuff. Thank you, Wizards, for acknowledging that we had some problems and doing something to fix it. I do genuinely believe the standard is going to be significantly more fun moving forward, and I'm definitely intrigued. Like, one of the decks that I really enjoy in Standard, that I've tried building around, is Rabble Rousing. If you haven't built a Rabble Rousing deck in Standard, you are missing out. The problem is Meathook Massacre just completely eradicates that whole strategy. The whole idea is to go wide with a ton of tokens and generate a ton of tokens and buff your whole team in cool ways. Like, it's fun to just go stupid wide and just timmy out, like, on your opponent. Meathook Massacre completely shut those strategies down. Now, cards like Farewell, Path to Peril, as previously mentioned, even Malicious Malfunction, like, those cards still exist and can really cut the legs out of that deck. However, they're not as powerful against other strategies, so they're less likely to just slot into every single deck, unlike Meathook. So, I think this was great. I am over the moon. I'm jazzed. Thank you, Wizards, for doing what you do, and thank you for giving us this ban and restricted announcement. And with that, I've been HamHox42 on the internet. You can catch me on Twitch as well as Twitter, at Hox42 on the Twitter birds, and on Twitch, it is twitch.tv/HamHox42. Yeah, I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more like it, where I cover news as well as do fun deck techs, click that subscribe button and the like button. It really helps the algorithm. Let YouTube know that you like what I'm doing. It means the world. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.